Hello, Algebra 2 students. For Mr. Fry, I'm looking at that multivariable linear systems and row operations. I'm working on the back. My previous video has the front done, so please refer to that for the front, but the back is the more difficult, doing the row echelon form. And we did number 9 together. I want to show it. These are my notes from in class when we did it together, and it kind of looks ugly, goes all over the place. But before I get to number 9 in a little neater way, remember that our desired goal when we have a 4x3 or a 3x2 is to have ones and zeros as such. We're going to get one of them that gets close to this, number 11, I think it is, and it gets close to it. There's like a -1 in there, and as long as they're ones and zeros, I guess we're okay. So remember those rules. You can interchange two rows, you can multiply just one row, or you could multiply and then add to the next row too. So you can multiply everything by one row and then add that to the next, and that changes the numbers, just so you know. That's how you're going to manipulate these. So in order to get this mess that we started off with, this was the front page kind of stuff, just getting it all, writing an augmented matrix. My 5 comes down here, 5, my -4 comes down here, my -10 comes down here. This is a -1, this is a 1, and this is a 2. So here's my augmented matrix. Now what I want to do is I want to get this to, this kind of situation where I have 1, 0, 0, 1, and then, these numbers over here are going to be whatever they're going to be. So notice that if I take the bottom row and I multiply it by 4 and then add it, so take for instance this one, -1 times 4 is -4 plus 5. So -4 plus 5 gives me 1. And then this one, 1 times 4 is 4. 4 plus -4 gives me 0. And then this one, 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus -10 gives me -2. So that's how this came about, okay? Now I want to change this down here. I want to get this to a 0. And how do I do that? Well, I take this first row and I multiply it by 1 and then add each term to each term down here. So, for instance, this first column here, 1 times 1 is 1. 1 plus -1 is 0. 0 times 1 is 0 plus 1, so that doesn't change that one. That's good because we didn't want to change it. And then this one, -2 times 1 is -2, plus 2 is going to be 0. So I'm done. That's how I got to my desired outcome for number 9. Now let's take a look at number 10. Okay, and you pause this as needed. 10 gets pretty lengthy. Okay, so I set up my augmented matrix. I notice here that I could just multiply this whole top row by a 1/4 in order to get this to be 1. Remember, I want the desired outcome of this. Okay, I want 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. Okay, and then those last numbers are going to be whatever they're going to be. So that's why I'm looking at this first. I want this to be a 1. So I'm going to multiply everything in this row by 1/4 just to get this to be 1. Notice the second and third rows just stay the same. So there's a lot of writing here, but a lot of it's staying the same, okay? And then what I did here is I multiplied everything in this row by -5, and then I added it to this row. I did that because I wanted this to become 0. So 1 times -5 is -5 plus 5 is 0. And then it's going to be whatever it's going to be for these. And this row, notice, stays the same, and this becomes this. Okay, I just copied this one. You're going to have to probably pause it. I copied it here. Okay, and then after copying it, I multiplied this row by a -3 and added it to the third row because I want this to be 0. So 1 times -3 is -3 plus 3 gives me a 0 down here, and here's my answer to that whole row. Everything else stayed the same. I noticed that I want this to become a 1, so 1/2 times 2 gives me that 1. So there we go. Notice the first and the third stayed the same. I just recopied this down here. Make sure you're pausing it, because no way I can just wait for you to write all that, because there's a lot of writing. Okay, and then I took this second row and I multiplied it by a -11 halves, because I wanted this to become, 1 times that is a -11 halves plus 11 halves is going to give me a 0 here. So that's good. That's what I wanted. So notice I got my 0 there. I'm just working my way through here. And I'm going to multiply the third row by a -1/12 so that I can have a 1 here. -12 times a -1/12 gives me that 1. Notice the first and second stayed the same. Okay, I copied this down here. I'm going to multiply everything by a -2. This is because I want this to become a 0. So 1 times -2 plus 2 is going to be 0. Notice that changed that. And then everything in this row I multiplied by a 1/2 and added to the first row. And boom, I got it. That's my final answer. I didn't draw the little, dotted line or whatever between, the answers and this part of that matrix, just because that would be too many lines and too confusing. I will give you the rest of them in a second video, because this video is going to be long to upload.